Hi, how are you? It is December 15th, and I just had a very nice conversation with Nicole Bukaty. And she has written a new guidebook on the Via de la Plata. It's on Cicerone, and I think it's one of the most complete books with maps and actually a lot of information about also the cultural things and the historic parts that you will pass on your way to Santiago if you walk from Seville up through Mérida, Cáceres, Salamanca, and Zamora, and then you can go up to Astorga to go to the Camino Francés, connect with that one, or you can continue on to Ourense and then all the way to Santiago. 1,000 kilometers. Anyway, I had a nice talk to her. You'll see on the video coming up that there's a QR code coming up once in a while. If you scan that with your phone, you will go to the website where you can have a look at the book and also buy it if you so would like to. So with that, here's Nicole and me and our conversation we had just earlier.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Good morning.
Hi, everyone. I'm here with Nicole Bukaty. Am I saying that right?
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes. And she has just written a book, a guidebook on Cicerone, Via de la Plata, and Camino Sanabres. And it's the first edition. So this is very exciting for you. Is it your first guidebook, is it?
It is my first guidebook, yes.
Yes, great. Now, how did you end up writing a guidebook on Via de la Plata?
So I started hiking a long time ago, and then my first long distance route was the Camí de Cabais in Menorca, which is wonderful. It's the whole coastline of Menorca, and my first Camino was the Camino Portugués, and that was in 2015. I'm a school teacher, so I have a full-time job, but I did realize that I was using all my holidays every single time to hike. So
Yes.
I thought, well, what can I do to combine teaching and hiking? And so initially, I actually trained to guide groups in the mountains. And then I realized I don't like walking in a big group.
Yes.
And what happened was I started using Cicerone guidebooks for my own hikes. And because I was hiking alone, I knew that I had reliable information to make sure that I was going to always be safe, that I knew exactly what I was doing, that I knew where I could stay, what was open. And I thought, I think I really want to do this as well. So that's what happened. And Via de la Plata, the guidebook to the Via de la Plata wasn't published yet or hadn't been written. So I suggested it. They agreed, and there we go.
That's right, because Cicerone did not have a Plata guide at all, because they have walking guides for every type of Caminos. I mean, all the Caminos and a lot of other hikes as well, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Lots of all over the world as well. Nearly all the long distance routes they have a guidebook for, and nearly all the pilgrim routes as well. So the main ones in particular. And I think we decided the Via de la Plata, it was a good time for the Via de la Plata to be written up, because it is that time where I think the Camino is regrowing in popularity. And I think especially pilgrims who have walked before on another Camino route are looking for the next adventure, the next challenge. So it was a perfect moment to provide that to them.
That's good. And so, so imagine you decided to write a guidebook. Where do you start? How long did it take you to write this book?
The whole, I would say, in total, to write the guidebook, it took me a year and a half. And that was with several trips on the Via de la Plata at different times of year, because to understand really what the route is like, you have to experience it in different weather conditions to really be able to describe it. So I've walked in spring, I've walked in July.
Yeah.
On the Via de la Plata.
Wow.
I have walked at Christmas. I once set up on the 25th of December. That was lovely. So I could see whether the albergue provision was sufficient to walk at Christmas time, and it is. So that's wonderful, especially at the start. So you can definitely walk in December. You can definitely walk in January. I've cycled in very difficult conditions with the weather in November to understand which parts of the route you might have to take an alternative, for example, go via the road because it might be too flooded.
Yes.
So walking, cycling, and writing for a year and a half. And then we got onto the copy editing stage.
Exactly. Now, do you feel like, is there a best time to walk it?
Yes, in the guidebook, well, there is this whole section about the weather, because I think with the Via de la Plata, it is probably the question that pilgrims and hopeful walkers tend to ask the most, is when should I go, or when is the best time? I would say, and what I do suggest in the guidebook, is if you have had experience of walking in 40 degrees plus and you know how to do it, you can be fine. Absolutely. It is manageable. I did it. And at that point, I was doing the Camino Sanabres. And it was very, very, very hot, of course. But if you're carrying enough water, if you can take the weight, and if you are careful, then of course you can still do it. Winter on the Meseta is hard. On the Meseta, it is very windy, very cold. It is very rainy. However, the section between Sevilla and Merida, so those 10 days, are beautiful for winter walking. So it's something I would really recommend in the winter, and that's what I did. As soon as you hit the Meseta, then the rain starts to fall and the winds make it difficult. And September is still very hot, as is October, I would say. So
Yep.
the start of autumn, very hot in the south, but it's very lovely once you hit the Meseta, and then once you enter Galicia, especially, it's a wonderful time of year to be walking in Galicia and seeing the colors change. However, I would say that the majority of the pilgrims who do walk now, and with good reason, walk in March and April, because at that point it's still relatively cold, or at least not very hot in the south, but it does start warming up already, so it's pleasant. The nights are still cool, and at least once you get to Galicia, possibly in April, you will maybe avoid the rain, maybe.
Maybe.
You'll probably
Exactly.
get a
You
little
never know with the weather these days.
Exactly.
And also with the climate change, it tends to get a little bit, at least this year was a little bit warmer than normal as well. So maybe
Yes,
take
it
that
was
into
warm.
consideration.
It
I
was.
remember I had one pilgrim this is a couple of years ago. He was walking de la Plata and he was saying it was really warm and he was not really used to the heat. And he said there were a few days where he didn't remember. There was a few hours midday that he didn't remember, which sounded really scary. But yes,
It is. I would say
yeah,
that in the summer, I think I'm a pilgrim who actually really likes walking when it's very hot. So that's fine. I prefer it. However, I would say in the summer, one of the things that was extremely difficult was sleeping at night. And I think that's on all the caminos, because of course
Yeah.
the rooms really, really get warm. Do not expect air conditioning. Do not expect even for there to be a fan on the Via de la Plata. I would say the accommodation is very different to what you can experience in the Camino Frances. You do not have such a wide selection. There are very few private albergues, which means that they are much more, they're called refugios. And that's with good reason in Spain. And it means shelters, because that's what they provide. It is basic accommodation. Not always. You can find some more, but you would have to carry a sleeping bag, for example. It's very rare that you'll get a bed sheet. Of course, once you enter Galicia, the municipal albergues are different, but the rest of the Via de la Plata, it's a little bit more rustic. And that means there's no heating in winter and no cooling down in the summer. So the nights, I think the warmest night I had, it was 36 degrees at night to try to sleep in. So
yeah, you don't get much
and
sleep,
that
I
was
guess.
July, yes.
Wow. Now, is it a hard route, you would say? Would you say it's let's say it's your first Camino, would this be a good one, or how would you think about that?
I would say that you can do it as your first Camino. Again, this is one of the most, I would say one of the most common questions that I receive and I've read. Should I do this as my first Camino? And many people say it's better to go once you've had a little bit of experience. However, I think what scares people to try it as their first Camino is day 3. And especially those first 3 days, because on day 1 and day 2, you can do stages of about 15 to 20 to 25 kilometers. But on day 3, straight away, you inevitably have to do about 32 kilometers, or no, 30 kilometers with nothing. However, it is also a Camino, which I think is a little, I think there's less judgment on the Via de la Plata because of the distances. So, for example, on day 3, many pilgrims with no judgment at all avoid the first 15 kilometers on one single road and enter a natural park, which is spectacular, and only walk those last 15 kilometers.
Yes.
And they share a taxi together, and nobody judges them. It is very common that pilgrims do divide those stages, and there are taxis which do help. And there is not the same judgment. I would say, as sometimes you get on other caminos, that, oh, you skipped this section, or
Yes.
not at all on the Via de la Plata because of the conditions. If you know it's going to rain all day, or if you know it's going to be very hot, and you want to walk this route, but you are so worried about walking 30 kilometers, carrying all the food and all the water you need for the day because there is nowhere to stock up, what else are you going to do? You won't put yourself at risk. So it's a spectacular day as well. So I would say there is always a way to be able to walk this route safely, even as a novice, as someone who has just started walking caminos. So there are good ways around it to avoid the difficulty.
Great.
Yes, it's very flat as well. It's one of the flattest caminos, I would say.
Okay. Well, that's some people are looking for that too. Something that is not like physically, you're not climbing mountains.
No.
Now, every guidebook author had different ways of writing and different ways of presenting the material. Do you feel like this guidebook is a guidebook to be used at home for planning, or is it to also bring, I'm guessing also to bring with you while you walk, right? Or how is this guidebook helpful for people? Is it for planning or for walking or for both?
I would say for both. The guidebook is set up in a way that if you are planning, all the accommodation listings have the times of the year when the accommodation is open. So if you're planning ahead, then it's a good way to have a look at how you can divide the stages. At the end of the guidebook, there is also there are stage planning tables, which give you options of if you do 20 kilometer days, 25 kilometer days, and even up to 40, because there are pilgrims who walk 40 kilometers and who enjoy walking 40 kilometers. And there is also a section where you can write up your exactly.
That's section?
The one. Yes.
Yeah.
So there are some helpful distances there as well between the different accommodation options. So it can help you with route planning. The guidebook also in the accommodation listings states whether you can reserve in advance. And I know for some pilgrims that is really reassuring to be able to know where they're going to stay. So that helps with the planning in advance. It gives a good overview of how to pack, what to pack. It gives you an overview of even some training as well. Some suggestions, mainly focusing on wearing in your shoes and getting a little bit used to carrying a backpack, because the Via de la Plata, if you really want to take on the challenge, you will have to carry a backpack with food and water a little bit more than maybe on a different Camino. So there is a lot in there that will help you with preparation in advance. For carrying the book with you en route, I think what the book provides is helping you be a little bit more spontaneous, of course, if you change your mind from your planning, but also the historical notes and the points of interest. Because the Via de la Plata is originally a Roman road. So it is a 2,000-year-old route, which is longer than the Camino to Santiago. So you are walking two routes at the same time. You're walking the Roman road and you are walking a pilgrim route. So the history, the abundance of history along the route is, and especially with regards to Roman monuments, Roman remains, is in abundance. It's endless. And so I think I did try to map all the different mile markers, all the Roman remains that you will cross on the route, and that way you can read about them in the book as you see them. And so I think that's really helpful for pilgrims when they're walking.
That's great. Yeah, that's great, because some guidebooks is really just a collection of phone numbers and contact information for the albergue or the lodging, and then really just maps and nothing more. But this is actually a guidebook which gives you more information than just listing of lodging information.
It
So that's
really
great.
does.
Do you feel like it's needed, like on the Frances now, people, I think most people book ahead. Do you feel like this is needed on the Plata?
There will be inevitably you will be staying in albergues where you will not have that option. So, like I said, the majority of the albergues are municipal albergues, often unmanned. So by that I mean that
Yes.
nobody is there upon your arrival. So sometimes you'll have a number on the door. Sometimes you'll have instructions to go to the bar down the road and register. So there will not really be anyone there to greet you, to welcome you. And at the same time, there isn't the possibility to reserve. So I would say compared to the Camino Frances, compared to the Camino del Norte, the Portugués, the Inglés, it is not as easy to have every stage solidly planted, solidly planned in your mind before you actually start the route because of the reservations. However, it is a quieter route, so you are very likely to find a bed. I even spent, especially when I went in November, I think I had 3 days in a row where I was alone in the albergues. So you have your private room.
Well, that's great. And that means it sounds like if it works like this, the albergues don't really close either then, because there's there's no one there anyway, right? So it's probably open longer than on the Frances, or some places close down.
Absolutely. There is on the Via de la Plata, it is rare that there will be moments. I think there are maybe a couple of albergues where I stayed where it said they weren't opening till about 3 o'clock. But there is usually the option to go, for example, to the town hall and pick up the keys, or to the local police, and pick up the keys, and
Yeah.
you won't find yourself standing outside waiting. On the Via de la Plata. You won't have to wait for the opening at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock. And I think it's because of the extreme weather. And many pilgrims do start the day very early on the Via de la Plata. They will start, especially once it gets warm, they will start at 5, 6 o'clock. And so, of course, they'll end their stage sometimes before midday, and I think the albergue provision, what's really wonderful about this route is there's this understanding that pilgrims will want to probably enter somewhere a little bit cooler and be in the shade now and rest
Yes.
up ahead of the next day. So
Yeah.
that's a good thing. Yes, indeed. And
Great.
at the same time, they won't necessarily tell you to leave early in the morning.
In the morning, yeah, that's true.
But you tend to have someone who comes to clean, and at that point, you know that you should probably get on your merry way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, do you have a favorite section of of Via de la Plata, the Camino? Do you have any favorites?
So it's that's a really hard question for me because I love it all so much. I would say that again, some pilgrims don't have time to walk the 43 days or so it takes to walk the Via de la Plata in one go. And actually, I find that the different sections you can do in a 2-week period, 10 days to 2 weeks, in themselves are magnificent. So I would say the stretch between Sevilla and Merida, if you have 10 days, 10 to 14 days to walk that as a Camino, as a walk on in itself, it is filled with variety. You go from one UNESCO World Heritage City to another. So you start and end, and I think it's a perfect 10 days to spend on the Camino. Variety in landscapes, variety in villages, a great taste of Andalusia, and then the start of Extremadura. Then from between Merida and Salamanca, again, it's a wonderful section that you can just walk as a section, again, from one UNESCO World Heritage City to another, starting in one absolutely magnificent city. That's it.
Yes, and you can see, I mean, if you just look at the map, it's a long walk. I mean, how many days is it? 40 days?
Yes, it's 1,000 kilometers almost. If you were
Wow.
taking the Sanabres option, so the one after Zamora where it splits and goes through
Yes.
Ourense and up to Santiago. So that's what La Plata links with the Camino Sanabres. Or
Yes.
you keep going to Astorga and then continue on the Camino
On the
Frances.
Frances, exactly. And that makes it a lot longer than the Camino Frances, for example, if you start in Saint-Jean, which I think is, 800, 900 something kilometers?
That's it, yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Wow.
exactly. It is longer. It is longer. And it's very hard to pick my favorite section. The Camino Sanabres, again, if you start in Zamora, in the north, Zamora, and you walk to Santiago, that takes about 2 weeks. So it's a lovely 2 weeks to have as well. And it's quieter. The entrance from Ourense, the last 100 kilometers, Ourense to Santiago, is one of the quietest 100 kilometers where you can receive your compost.
That is true. And that is also true. And now with the talking about communications too, with the high-speed train we have from Santiago to Ourense, if you just want to fly into Santiago, take this half an hour by train, you're in Ourense, and then you could walk back. Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's true.
And that's 4 or 5 days of walking, so it's perfect. And if you wanted to start a little bit earlier, then you can also start in Agudinha, where the AVE, the high-speed train, stops, and before that, even in Puebla de Sanabria, and you have the connection between Santiago and Zamora. So with trains, which really does, it's very helpful for this route. So you can stop and start, and there are train stops in all these major cities along the route, which makes it really easy to do it in sections if you can't do everything in one go. Yeah.
Great. Now, this project of yours has been going on for a couple of years since you started writing it. And do you have any favorite memories of the whole project?
I would say when I first set off, I set off with my sister and her dog. I do advise not to walk the Via de la Plata with the dog. Okay, we weren't. We were investigating the book, so our journey was a little bit different. So we did have a car as a backup in case something. Well, especially if the doggy didn't feel too well. But we were walking him in a pram, so he didn't have to walk the whole way. So I think the local villagers found that quite entertaining. That was lovely. And I would say when I did the Camino Sanabres in July, I met the most wonderful people. There were about 8 of us pilgrims walking at the same time, and that was it. Of course, July, so it was very quiet. So we bonded very quickly and in very difficult conditions, very, very warm weather. There were some pilgrims who hadn't walked before, so it was their first time walking a Camino. And so we really, really helped each other, and our arrival in Santiago was very emotional. And 2 of them were filming and carried a drone, and they took the photo, which is the front cover.
Oh, that's great.
So, which I obviously credit to them inside the book. So that isn't my photo, the majority are, but this photo, it was this wonderful couple from Italy who took that beautiful shot, and with the drone that they were carrying. I was very impressed that they were carrying that weight.
That's true. Actually, I run the luggage stores here in Santiago, and many times people send me drones because it was too heavy, and the charger and everything, the batteries, and I get a lot of drones in boxes. Now, what about the future? Do you have any future projects? Any future guidebooks? Maybe, I don't know. What are your future?
Yes. So currently, I am co-writing a guidebook with Sandy Brown, who you probably have heard of, who has written a guidebook for Cicerone for the Camino Frances. He has also written the first 3 parts of the Via Francigena in Italy, from Canterbury to Rome. So there are 3 guidebooks to that. And he has written the California Missions Trail guidebook as well. So I really look up to him. He was my mentor throughout the process, and I admire him very much, a very close friend now. And we are co-writing the Via Francigena in the south. So walking from the Vatican to Santa Maria de Leuca, which is the heel of Italy, passing the ports where pilgrims used to take still do, take boats to Albania, and then eventually walk to Jerusalem. So we are in that process at the moment.
That's great. Do you have any dates for when that might come out, or is it too early?
We are hoping that we will finish writing by June next year, and we are hoping for publication by Christmas next year. It might be a little bit later than that, but as the Via Francigena Association in Italy are very keen for this to happen quickly. So we are co-writing to speed things up. And I am very grateful to be writing with such an incredible author who has written so many books. And
that's true.
It's so valuable.
That's great. Well, thank you for having this short conversation with me about your book. I put a little QR code up on the screen. If you scan that with your phone, you'll be taken to the website where I sell this on my store. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to say about the book or about the whole project before we end.
Well, I do feel that the Via de la Plata is a once in, well, like all caminos, does provide pilgrims with a beautiful, beautiful walk like caminos do. And in addition, I think it is the years of history of this route, which you can see as you walk. So where you really do explore Spain, and you can see the impact of history on the landscape, on the people. You can see the España Vacía, which is the empty part of Spain, which really has a strong impact. It's a part of Spain that everyone is keen for it to be a little bit more repopulated, see a little bit more life to it. And I think pilgrims bring a lovely form of tourism to local communities, because we are respectful, we leave early, we don't stay up late, we don't leave a mess. So
That's right.
I think we're environmentally conscious. So I think especially Extremadura would love to see more pilgrims. So I'm hoping we'll see more, and I'll see you there.
Exactly. All right. Well, thank you for this talk, and good luck with this book, and good luck with the other book for the next year and the year after.
Thank you so much, Ivar, for having me. It's been a
Okay.
pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.